This is Scotty Elcon with Silly Film News here at the Dallas International Film Festival. We're here with the filmmaker behind Rememory.
Hi, I'm Mark Palansky, the filmmaker behind Rememory.
Well, Mark, you've had the script for a while. I mean, Peter's been attached since like 2012.
Yeah, I first had the idea probably in 2009, and then I probably sat down with him around 2009 to it was just at that point just scribblings in my journal. That I kind of said, this is what I'm thinking about, and he said, I'm in, and it was nothing at that point, but like I said, just sort of scribbling. So I wrote it with Mike Vukadinovich, my co-writer. So we started probably 2010, and then we were actually prepping in 2012, and we got shut down. So it was reborn last year, basically.
So did you film it before Unfortunate or after?
I filmed it before that.
Okay.
Yeah, I filmed it before that. I actually was in post on Rememory, went and did series of unfortunate events, and then came back and finished post on Rememory. Because in TV, like
So
the
quicker.
the post isn't, for me, Rememory's been basically, for prep shooting, it's well over a year. And then series of unfortunate events was like, probably all told 3 months.
Wow, okay.
So it's kind of but we were still working on Rememory.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you start the film. I want to bring up, I'm a huge National fan, so I've got to ask.
Oh, awesome.
Putting that in there,
That's
that
great.
must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm glad a few people have touched upon that. I'm always excited when they do because it was a big part for me. I mean, the document, they did a documentary called Mistaken for Strangers that was kind of, in some ways, an inspiration because it was obviously the dynamic between
The brothers.
the brothers and just this idea that one of your brothers is a rock star and you're you. It's like, so that was kind of a jumping off point just for the dynamic between Peter and his brother in the film. Obviously, we don't go too much into that in the film, but so that was a jumping off point. So I'm a huge National fan. So we just were so lucky to actually get the song, and we got another song over the end credits. I actually, there's a great kind of story where we didn't, we're a small movie, so typically those things, even when you know the musician or anything like that, it's still a process because you got to go through the record companies. We got the song. Peter and I wrote a passionate letter to the band, and they said, you can use "Mistaken for Stranger." It was great. And then Peter last year he said, the premieres for Game of Thrones are always in LA, and so he said, he invited me, and he said I'm sitting next to someone you might like, and it was Matt Berninger from the National. So Matt and I have now become friends and talked and stuff. So it's been kind of an amazing thing because it's like it's a full circle. When I first saw the documentary, I didn't know the band or anything, and so they were both an inspiration. And then now to know them a bit, it's pretty cool.
That's real cool.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah.
Speaking of Peter, how did you get your DP? Because he's also a Game of Thrones guy.
Yeah. So the Game of Thrones obviously is what it is, but it's not a look I was going for this film. It's a different kind of thing. And I was the cinematography of the film is really important to me. The look, the visuals, all that stuff, as it is with most. But Greg's name came up. A few people said, after they kind of heard me talking about the film, they said, you got to get Greg Middleton. And at that point, I didn't know Greg Middleton. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know him. And basically, I looked at his work and, well, he's phenomenal. And then I spoke to Peter, and Peter said, Greg's great. He's great to deal with. He's great. You'd love him. So Greg, he's on Game of Thrones for like 6 or 8 months out of the year. Those schedules, especially for the DPs, it's like they're doing visual effect. There's so much. So he was in Belfast, and we didn't even know if we could really, if we could even meet with him, let alone get him. He flew to Vancouver for like a day or two and said, let's meet for coffee. He'd read the script and said, let's meet for coffee, and very much kind of wanted to hear where I was coming from. Because for someone like him, we're a small movie, and when you're a small movie, everything's a struggle.
Yeah.
You're calling in favors. You got to get crew that's passionate and maybe not the top tier crew, stuff like that. So it's always a lot of work for everyone because you're working kind of extra hard to make up for the money you don't have. And I cannot say enough about Greg. Like we had that that first sit down, and then we were definitely just partners in crime from then on. And he really, I told this story last night because someone asked at the Q&A after the premiere last night about Greg and the cinematography. There's a scene in the film between Peter and Julie, the first scene where he comes in and tells this long story about how he knew her husband, and Greg was operating the camera, and as soon as I yelled cut, which was like a 7 or 8 minute take, Greg was crying. He's operating the camera crying, and it was really because of the emotion of the scene, not because he was in pain or anything. But that's just, it speaks to Greg's kind of, he's both an incredible cinematographer, but he's a soulful person and really got the drama and emotion of the movie. So he was great. He and I will definitely work together again.
Before we jump into kind of like the science of the movie, can we talk about the emotion? Because I was blown away about how much this is about people's emotions and the impact of them opening up to Martin's character especially. Where did that come from? Was that always part of the script, that this is going to affect them much more emotionally than maybe like memory-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when you think about memory, I think when you really think about memory and get right down to it, and then kind of think about the spectrum of memory in your life, you have memories that are random and weird, and whatever, maybe some fun things you did as a teenager, or some childhood things, but you obviously, the emotional ones stand out. Those are the things that kind of get you through hard times, or and so I think that it always kind of came back to the truth, especially once I started researching that our memories are really inaccurate. Like that stuff in the film is scientifically fact. A lot of the dialogue in the initial sort of TED talk when he's unveiling the machine is taken from research I had done, where he basically says people think of memories as filed away facts stored safely in the brain, but in actuality, your brain resynthesizes the memory every time you tell it, which means it changes every time. It basically, because it's pulling out each thread of the memory, so it changes a lot over time. So then, once we figure that out, then the idea of like getting to the truth of something is ultimately it's emotional. I mean, and obviously what Peter's after in the film, he knows the truth of his past, but he needs to purge it. He needs to let everyone else know the truth of his past. So it just kind of naturally keeps coming back to the emotion of it all. And I don't know. I mean, as a film goer, I love going to see all kinds of films, big stuff, small stuff, and you're always much more. You walk out of the theater and you've been emotionally hit by something. It's just a much more powerful experience, But I saw King Kong a couple weeks ago and like that, So it takes all kinds, I guess.
Where did you guys come up with the machine itself and the fact of it being like cards, like data cards?
Yeah. Well, I wanted the machine to be timeless and a bit retro. It's a prototype as well in the film. So my idea was always that he's flying out to go start what the real production of the machine would be, so that whatever the first iPod would have looked like, it wouldn't have looked like what you'd buy in the store. It would probably be some kind of very basic thing. So I wanted it to look almost like it could exist in the 70s or 80s. Or now, and so that was the design of the machine. The funny thing with designing that kind of stuff is you don't realize how much Apple has kind of influenced your life until you start trying to design one of those things. Because when we were just designing 3D models and whatever, they're just basic gray tone colors. So it looks silver. So everything you look at, it looks like an Apple product. No matter what you do, it just looks like an Apple product. So we really we kept fighting that, because I didn't want it to look like a sort of a new MacBook or something like that. And it doesn't. I mean, it looks very old. And then the glass was something the production designer came up with. It was really cool. I mean, they were sort of. I definitely wanted something very, very super simple. Because there are a lot of them, and the natural thing is like a dongle or a USB dongle or something like that. And in a lot of our sort of research and imagery, we looked at microscope slides. So those are basically microscope slides with kind of circuitry within them to kind of keep with both a timelessness, it's kind of futuristic and in the past, and the science of it. keep it more scientific than tech.
And then the actual using like the visual, the glass on glass, it looked so great when you shot the other side and we could mirror those images.
Yeah.
Beautiful shots.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the glass itself is the same aspect ratio as the film.
Okay.
So we did a sort of 2:4:0 aspect ratio for the Rememory machine glass, so that it's the exact same aspect ratio when you're looking through it. And yeah, I mean, I'd always planned kind of seeing through the memories to the actor behind, because again, it's like it's tying those emotional things. So it was fun to play with. I mean, the machine itself. Most, any normal budget movie I think would have like 5 of them just in case. We had one that, no joke, like arrived the first day of filming and didn't work, and it was like, I don't know if you've heard all those stories about Spielberg and Jaws with how the shark never worked. It was a similar thing where this machine just was like, and because we only had one, it was very, very difficult to deal with. It didn't do many things, but it was not working most of the time.
A film around it.
Yeah, we had to film around it, exactly.
Let's switch to the mystery side, the noir elements. Peter dominates in that side of it. I think he's so great. But I've got to ask, where did all his names come from? Basil Pine was one. I was like, what are they doing? This is great.
I think between Mike and I, who I wrote it with, like we both, I have a friend who's got a kid named Rafferty. And it's a great name, and it's a sort of, so I think that, and there were James Clinch. Clinch is a photographer I like a lot. So they kind of, there were, that idea, like I one day was just thinking like, well, if you wanted to distance yourself from your past, even aside from the detective aspect of it, like you would just not tell anyone the truth about who you are. So you can always kind of, go order your coffee and say, oh, I'm Danny. And it's like, okay, you're not who, it's like even in simple ways, you're not coming to terms with who you are. So that was kind of why he uses all those names. It was because of that first, and then it works. It serves the detective, him kind of being a noir detective story second, but it was kind of just a very easy way for him not to admit who he was, because even the fisherman at the end, he's lied to. So, and that guy, he has no need to lie to, but he just
almost felt like it's become second nature to him in that moment.
Yeah.
So I know Lee's not here, but Lee's really interesting tie to Dallas with his family. But as far as producing, did you see Comet that he produced as well?
I didn't see Comet, no, but I know the film, but I haven't seen it yet, no.
It's also about memory, and I was curious if Lee had ever talked to you about that or anything.
No, I didn't see it. I mean, I know it's the guy who did Mr. Robot, right? Yeah. So I just want to see it. No, Lee, the way the project kind of, I wrote it for Peter Dinklage, so it wasn't a traditionally kind of film that you put together, and Lee and I he had brought me another project, and it was kind of a bit of a drama, the one he brought me, and I remember thinking, like, if I'm going to go do a drama, I'm going to go do the one I wrote, and so, but we really got on well, and he's a great producer, and really kind of, for us to make this movie for the money we had, you need a producer who understands how to get the most out of people, because you can't throw money at a situation, you can, we the house, for example, we filmed it, it's like a $25 million home in Vancouver, and the owner was a fan of Game of Thrones. So he was like, gave it to us for basically, nothing, because he's a fan of Game of Thrones, but like all of the producers you have to really push to make those things happen. So
you have a lot of locations like that look amazing. The actual corporation building is really cool.
Yeah, that's a botanical garden. That I mean, when I was before I even scout, I'm just Google searching, I'm Google searching, and I found that online in LA. I was just looking at interesting architecture, and we got there and again made that happen. I think one of the things with this film that was really nice was because of the subject matter, and it's not like you go to a place like that and say, oh, we're doing a Jason Statham shoot 'em up. you know, because of the subject matter, even though people like at a location don't necessarily, you know, they're not invested in the movie, it's like we were trying to do something meaningful or emotional or dramatic or interesting or scientific or any of those things. And so I think those things for a location like a botanical garden that's open to the public, it's very difficult logistically for us to film in, that should cost more money than we had, all those things, they kind of open their doors because we're trying to do something interesting, you know, in terms of the film. So, but that's all the producers, you know, really. It's like I just say, I want this, and then they have to figure out how to make it happen. So it's a testament to their abilities more than mine.
Well, it looked great on camera. I've got to ask, talking about interesting, how was last night? It was the first screening.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that, showcasing it to a Dallas audience?
Well, it was great. You know, we premiered at Sundance, but this is the first this is the first audience that's seen it since Sundance. So I kind of said last night, I think that when I showed it at Sundance, I had just finished the film 5 days before it showed there. So I had zero. I was still in kind of like shock mode about the whole thing. So last night was really nice because I'm a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more like, great, here it is, you know, just excited about the situation rather than kind of the nervous anxiety. It was great, and the response was really great. I mean, one of the things I noticed last night that was so awesome was I had high school kids coming up to me afterwards, and you know, older people coming up, and that's really kind of great, because the fact that it's like affecting both young and old means that I think the emotion is maybe tapping into something that everyone feels. I mean, the idea of memory is something that everyone just immediately, doesn't matter what age you are, you're kind of like, oh yeah, and most people don't think about memories. You just sort of like, yeah, I have them, but you don't think more than that, you know. And so I think that the idea itself is something that is cool to see audiences engage with.
Well, you did say that you guys sold it. Do you mind telling us about where the film will go from here, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell, what I can tell you is it was sold to, we're getting a theatrical release with 2 fantastic companies that you've heard of. It's going to be August. It'll be released in August, but we haven't started, you know, any of the marketing or any of that stuff yet. And so the 2 companies are still doing their paperwork, but it's great. I mean, I can tell you with the screening at Sundance, we had 9 offers within the first day. So, you know, you go to a place like Sundance with the only hope that you find a life after that, you know. So the fact that we will be not only getting a release, but a theatrical release, and, you know, and then of course we'll be on the digital platforms and all that stuff too. For me, it's great, because I know, you know, at this point, most people watch things at home. And like, you know, probably 90% of people watch whatever they're going to watch at home. And that's kind of the life of your film now. But you make it for a big screen. You know, you visually make it for a big screen. So the fact that at least it will have some time shown on a big screen, I'm thrilled with. Because who knows what the future, I mean, it may not be that way for much longer. You know, I mean, it'll be that way for the big Avatar and stuff like that. But
Well, I really loved it. Of all the, I don't know, like 100 films or so I've seen, I was really blown away by it. And any film that has the national deserves to be shown on a big screen. So, Mark, thanks for bringing us to Dallas, and it was a pleasure, man.
Thanks so much for having me.